Hey, what's up? I'm Norris, and today I'll be filling in for Wifey once again to do her latest sew along on her most recent Mimi G Simplicity pattern, which is 9824, which is view B, the short coat. Now, if you're new to sewing or just want to brush up on your skills a bit, you can visit sewacademy.com and take advantage of our free trial with no credit card needed. So now grab your pattern and all your tools, and let's get started. Okay, so like I was saying before, this is the latest Mimi G Simplicity pattern, and this is 9824, and we're doing view B, which is the shorter jacket. So if I turn it to the back, don't forget you have your suggested fabrics. That includes the lining as well. And then also, once you look at your measurements, go down to the finished garment measurements to see what that overall measurement will be, and then you can adjust to what size you want to cut, whether it's bigger or smaller, or grading at the hips, or whatever you want to do to make that a good fit. Okay, so once you cut out all of your fabrics and linings and mark everything as you see on the pattern, we can begin sewing. Okay, so before we get started, I just want to let you know that you might want to get your lining the exact same color if you don't want the color of your lining showing on your jacket. Now, this particular design, when we top stitch the patch pockets onto the front, it's not going to be an edge stitch. The stitch is going to be a 3/8 of an inch away from the edge, so you will see the lining just a little bit. So if you want the color to show, you don't need the exact same color. So I just want you to know that. So first step, right size facing, I'm going to take my lining and place it over my fabric. I'm going to pin. Now we're going to head to the machine and we're going to stitch starting at the bottom, but not in the center. We're going to start a little closer to one side because we need to leave a gap, at least a 1-inch gap at the bottom. So we're going to start here, stitch all the way around, pivot across the top, pivot across the other side, and then stopping about 1 inch from where you started using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now I'm going to show you why later, but we're going to stitch completely around, leaving a gap at the bottom. And then now for the flap, we're going to be pressing 3/8 of an inch across the top, wrong sides facing. So since this is my wrong side, that's where I'm going to be pressing the 3/8 of an inch. And then for the fabric portion, you see the interfacing here, you want to press in 3/8 of an inch the same way, okay? Now we're right sides facing, and that 3/8 of an inch pressed down, we're going to pin. So now that we have everything pinned, let's head to the machine. And for the flap, like I said, we're going to leave both the 3/8 of an inch pressed down, and we're going to stitch start on one side all the way to the other side using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So let's do both of these, come back, and we'll continue. Okay, so we're back from the machine. We went ahead and did our stitches. Let's go ahead and take care of these corners and trim some of the seam allowance down. And then for the flap, as you can see, both ends are stitched down with 3/8. And I'm just going to trim this down just a little bit. Okay, let's turn this right side out. Once you get this a really good press, you can base the top opening and then also top stitch 3/8 of an inch all the way around the sides and also the bottom. And then now we got to turn this right side out. Okay, so go ahead and give these a really good press, and then also do your 3/8 of an inch top stitching all the way around on your flap, and then come back and we'll continue and start placing your patch pockets onto your front. Okay, so I'm back from the pressing table and also the machine. Before we place flap and patch pocket onto the front piece, I just want to show you that when we turn this patch pocket right side out, you want to go ahead and slip stitch that little opening after you press it, and then you want to do your buttonhole on your flap, okay, right after you do your 3/8 of an inch around, okay? So if you don't do it now, it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, for you to do your buttonholes up on your machine. So you want to make sure you do it now. So let's go ahead and pin this onto where our markings are. We have 2 dots here, and then the other 2 dots are for the flap. So let's go ahead and do one at a time. Okay, so we're gonna head to the machine. Now, if you want to, you can edge stitch first, and then you can stitch again 3/8 of an inch from the first one. But this pattern, there's no edge stitch on the patch pocket. You can just stitch 3/8 of an inch away from the edge of the pocket, okay? It's supposed to have like a little 3D, a little effect. So just to let you know, because that's why wifey designed it that way. So for the flap, you can measure 3/8 of an inch away from the fold here, and that 3/8 of an inch that you measure should be right at that marking, okay? So I'm just gonna place, you don't want it to be exactly where the marking is. You want to push it 3/8 of an inch away, and then that's where you're going to pin. The directions might tell you to base first or to just prep it so you can keep it in place. I think my pins are pretty good enough, so I don't have to worry about it moving on me. Okay, so let's go ahead to the machine and knock this out. Okay, so you see the little 3D effect it gives it. And then now, as you can see, that's my marking right here. Let me grab a pen. So right here where this needle is, where this pen is, you see the marking. So that's going to be 3/8 of an inch up. And then we're just going to stitch that down. Okay, so once you give the flap a good press this down, and then you want to top stitch across using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so we're back from the machine. As you can see, we went ahead and I just put a pin here. I haven't applied a button yet, but you want to do your other upper patch pocket and upper flap the same exact way, and then you want to do the lower one the same exact way. There's no difference. It's just a little bit bigger and a different placement. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab your back piece. So with our back piece, right side facing up and right side facing, we're going to take our front and we're going to pin at the shoulders. There should be a notch in the center. Pin there first. Okay, so we're just gonna head to the machine. You want to stitch across one shoulder using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, then do the other one the same exact way. Come back and we'll continue. All right, as you can see, we're back from the machine. We have our front and back attached at the shoulders, and I pressed that seam open. And then also, there should be a marking right here in this corner. You should base stitch starting about 1 inch away from that marking and then pivot about 1 inch that way. So once you do that, we'll be able to clip into that corner, making sure not to go through your stitching, just like that. Okay, I'll show you that again, just clipping right here. Okay, just like that. And then now, what I'm gonna do, just grab your undercollar, right sides facing, and they both should be interfaced. We're going to pin at that double knot, at that triple notch, and then go ahead and stitch this across using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then come back and we'll continue. Okay, so I'm back from the machine. As you can see, I pressed that seam open on our undercollar, and then now what we're going to do is we're going to pay attention to this portion right here of the undercollar. I'm not sure if you can see, but there should be two. Let me try to make it a little darker. There should be 2 small markings right here, 2 dots. Those 2 dots should line up with the 2 dots here, okay? So right where we slashed that here on our front piece, right there, there's another marking here. So we're going to line that up just like this. So right here, and actually I want to pin with the front on top. So right here where that slash at, I'm gonna go ahead and put my needle right here, and then I'm gonna turn the collar just so I can see the marking on the other side and make sure that pin go through. Okay. And then that second marking, there we go. Okay. So now when I head to the machine, I'm only going to be stitching in between these markings. I'm going to start here, stitch till I get here, back stitch and cut my threads. Okay. So we want to pin the other side the same way. I'll show the other side just so you can get two looks at it. Okay, same thing. So let's head to the machine and stitch between our two markings. Okay, so we're gonna start right there where that marking is, at the bottom of that slash. I'm gonna go ahead and put my needle down. 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, just like that. And you want to stitch your other one the same exact way. Okay, so I'm back from the machine, as you can see, and we only have the little sides between our markings stitched. And then now we're going to stitch the rest of our neckline. So you just want to pay attention to your markings. There should be a marking at both shoulders. Then you want it to pin. Okay, so you don't want to cut any of this seam allowance. You just want to press this open. And then now we're just going to head to the machine. And actually, I like looking at this side here because of that split that we cut. So let me go ahead and repin this the other way. So now we're just going to head to the machine. We're going to start right here where that marking is, and we're going to stitch all the way across, stopping at our other marking, our other dot, using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so once again, it's gonna look just like that. That's why we cut into that fabric so it can open up. And just a note, we're supposed to be starting in the center and stitching outward, starting in the center, going to one end, and starting in the center again, going to the other end. I'm able to stitch in one direction because I'm being very careful not to let this slide, but just to let you know, it would be a lot easier if you just started in the center and went to both ends. But I'm going to continue this way since I've already started. Okay, so we're back from the machine. As you can see, we've attached our full undercollar. And then on this side, you can see how good that corner is. So good. So if you did it exactly how I explained it, both of your corners should look just like that on your jacket. So now you can trim a bit. I'm not gonna trim too much on my neckline. Just might this corner right here. I think I'm gonna keep most of my seam allowance. So now you can just go to your pressing table and press all your seams open on your neckline and also on your collars on the side too. So just press those open, and then we're gonna grab your sleeves and continue. Okay, so next we're working on our sleeve and our sleeve band. So we're right sides facing. There's two notches right here, and there's two notches on the band. So we should match that up. And then we're gonna pin. Okay, so head over to your machine. We're gonna stitch across using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then once you do that, you're gonna press your seam allowance towards the top of your sleeve, and we're gonna top stitch that seam 3/8 of an inch, okay? So go ahead and stitch across using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then come back and we'll continue. Okay, so we're back from the machine, and as you can see, I went ahead and attached the band to our sleeve. Now, I told you to push the seam allowance towards your sleeve and then top stitch 3/8 of an inch. The directions do say push them down and then top stitch on your band. It's a minor detail. You can do that, or you can keep it the way I just mentioned. So next step, we're going to attach our sleeve to our front and back, basically to our jacket. So let's go ahead, right sides facing. And for the front, we have 1 notch. For the back, we have 2. So you want to make sure you have the right sleeve. Okay, now that we have our sleeve pinned to the jacket, you want to start on one end and stitch all the way across using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so we're back from the machine. As you can see, we have both of our sleeves put on. And then what we did with that seam allowance, we just pressed it open. And then now we're gonna turn wrong side out with right sides facing, and we're gonna close out the sleeve and also the side seam of the jacket. So let me lay this out so y'all can see it a little bit better. So you want to make sure to pin up under your arm. That seam has to match. You don't want that to be goofy. And then that side seam. Continue pinning your side seam, and also, especially right here where your band is, you want that seam to be matching up as well. So you want to pin your other side seam the same exact way, and then head to the machine. We're going to stitch one side going all the way down to the other end using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so we're back from the machine. As you can see, the side seam and the underarm is stitched up together on both sides. So we're going to put it to the side for just a moment, and we're going to grab our facing and our front lining. Front facing and front lining, and we're right sides facing. Well, this is the right side. And then flipping it wrong sides, right sides facing, we're going to pin along this side here. Match up all your notches. So down here at the bottom, there is a marking, and we're going to stop stitching there, okay? So you want to put a pin there just to make sure you don't go past that. Okay, so now since it's pinned, we're going to head to the machine, and once again we're going to use a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, starting on one end, stitching all the way, stopping at our marking down here. Okay, you want to back stitch, cut your threads, and we're going to stop right there. So go ahead and do that, come back and we'll continue. Okay, so we're back from the machine. I have both my left and my right side done. So what we're going to do right now, I'm going to turn it wrong sides facing up, and we should be pressing our seam allowance towards the lining, so they should be pressed this way. And right where we should have, right where you stop stitching at the bottom, we're going to slash, we're going to cut right into the seam allowance only on the facing side, and we're only going to go 5/8 of an inch in, which is where the stitching is. Okay, just like that. Okay, so we're going to head to your pressing table, and we're going to press this towards the facing, and then the same thing over here. Okay, just like that. So once you give that a good press, the same way we did the front, how we basted right here in this corner here, to secure it, now we're going to slash to your marking without going through your stitching, just like that. And then the same thing for this one. Okay, just like that. So go ahead and press this down here to the bottom and come back and we'll continue. Okay, so I went ahead and pressed the bottom on both sides. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna connect our back lining piece to our front facing and our lining. All right, so there should be a notch in the middle for you to pin here first. And this is basically the same thing that we did for our front and back pieces. Okay, so now we're just gonna head to the machine. You want to stitch across your shoulders here and then also here using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. All right, so I'm back from the machine. You can see that we attached the back lining with the front lining and the front facing, and we press that seam open right here at the shoulders. And then now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our upper collar and we're going to line it up the same way that we did the undercollar. So right here, where that marking should be, we're gonna line it up with the marking on the upper collar. Okay, basically just like that. Then I'll go ahead and do this one too while we're here. Okay, so now we're just going to head to the machine and we're going to stitch between the two markings, starting here and then stopping right there, back stitching at the beginning and also at the end. And then once you do that, we're going to bring it, swing it around and do the same exact thing that we did to close out the rest of the neck. Okay, so go ahead and do that, come back and we'll continue. Okay, so I'm back from the machine. As you can see, the upper collar is fully attached to the lining and the facing. And the same way we did the under collar and the jacket, we open up those seams. It looks exactly the same. So now what we're going to do is grab our sleeves, our sleeve lining. And just so you know, I ran out of this fabric, so I had to use a close fabric. It's a little bit off, but this is going to be the sleeve lining. So basically, we want to do it the same exact way we did our sleeve. Make sure that you align your double notches indicating the back and then a single notch in the front. Okay, so we're going to head to the machine once again. We've done this before. You want to take your 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and we're going to stitch from one end all the way to the other end, and you want to pin and sew your other sleeve the same exact way. And then once you do that, we're going to close out your side seam and also your underarm of your sleeve and press those seams open. Do all of that, come back, and we'll continue. Okay, so we're back from the machine. As you can see, we have our sleeves attached, and then we closed out the side seam and also our underarm. So let's go ahead and start putting this together. Okay, so right side's facing. What are we gonna do is we're gonna focus on the under and upper collar first. Okay, the first thing we're gonna do is we're going to start right here where that marking is. We're gonna pin right there. Okay, so we're not gonna focus on the lapel part right here. We only focus on here and up. Okay, so let's keep going around. There's 2 notches for you to pin there. And then the same thing for this side. Once that match up, we'll pin right there at that marking. If you fold that down, you'll be able to see a little bit better right here. Okay, so let's head to the machine. We're gonna start at one marking, making sure that you move the lapel part out the way and you make this flat like this, and that'll make sure nothing is up under it. And then we're gonna use our seam allowance, which is 5/8 of an inch all the way around to our other side. Once you put your needle down, you can move your pin, make sure that your seam allowance is set up. Okay, so we're back from the machine. As you can see, we did our stitches, and just so you can see it, it's stitched all the way up into that point. And then now we're going to start right at the top of the lapel under the collar, and we're going to pin. All right, so we're going to pin this lapel all the way down. You should have a double notch right here. Okay, so now we're going to head to the machine. We're going to start right where we stopped off with that stitching. Go all the way around, and we're going to get to the bottom and pivot. And then once we pivot, we're going to stitch right over this fold here, okay? And we're using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so moving right along, we're back from the machine. As you can see, we went ahead and did the collar, obviously, and then we did all the way down the front and then the bottom. So now let's go ahead and come to the hem. So what we're gonna do is, you're gonna take both side seams. We're going to bring your lining all the way up to the hem like that, and then you want it to do it all the way across. Also, since we're here, I just want to note, I don't think I mentioned it, you should have cut off 1 inch from your back lining, okay? So if you see that your back lining is 1 inch longer, you have to cut it off, if I didn't mention it. All right, so I want to make sure I did that. Don't want you mad at me. Slide down. Okay, so down here at the bottom, we're using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, okay? A 1/2 inch. So you want to start right here where your lining is and go all the way across. And I would say right here between the middle and then also your side seam, you want to leave a gap. Let me see how much that is, just to give you at least, I would say 8 inches. You want to leave a good, well, 8 to 10. You want to leave a good 8 to 10 inches, just so we could finish off our sleeves and also turn it right side out. You can put it in a pin just to indicate where you're going to stop at. And then once you do that, you want to skip over and then start back and finish off at the other side, okay, where your lining is. So let's go ahead to the machine, stitch the lower hem down using a 1/2 inch, and remember to leave an 8 to 10 inch opening at the bottom. Okay, so we're back. As you can see, we went ahead and did the bottom of the hem here. So before we trim the corners and trim around the collars and some of the seam allowance, I want to turn it with the wrong side of the jacket facing up. Down here at the bottom, you want to fold up like this. The hem allowance, basically folding up the hem allowance like this, and the hem allowance is 1.5 inches. So basically measure that. Okay, so once you get it like this, you want to go ahead and just baste, do a blind stitch. You want to baste this onto itself just like this. And when you get to, and let me slide it down, and when you get to the portion where we didn't stitch it down, you just want to leave the lining free and continue to baste down the back of the jacket, leaving the lining free. And we're going to do that all the way until we get down to the other side. And this is to keep the hem in place once we turn it right side out. So just go ahead and get your needle and thread, and you just want to hand stitch onto the wrong side of the jacket the way that you see it here, okay? Then after we do that, we're gonna do some trimming and turn it right side out. Okay, so moving right along, as you can see, I hand stitched all the way across, even right here, except for the lining. Let me take my pins out. That's a good tip. You can pin it in place as you stitch it. It makes it much easier. Let's go ahead and cut some of these curves here down to at least 1/4 of an inch. So you want to finish trimming the other side the same exact way, and then we'll get ready to go ahead and turn it right side out. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn it right side out. Just slowly pull your jacket through your opening at the bottom. So you can use this time now to finish turning it right side out. Get your point turner, make sure all your collars are pointed out, and also down here at the bottom, and give it a good press, and then come back and we will continue working on the jacket. Okay, so moving right along, as you can see, I gave it a good press. You see the jacket came out really, really good. I'm so excited. Even on the inside, we will hand stitch this a little later, but just to open it up just a bit, once you turn it the right side out, with that base, will automatically give you a nice clean hem. Only thing I do is just press it really nicely, and we will hand stitch this portion a little bit later. So let's go ahead and move along to the sleeve. So I'm gonna just show you one sleeve. Okay, so you want to grab the sleeve lining like this, and we're gonna turn down the seam allowance on the fabric and also on the lining. So just like this, okay? So just turn it down where that fold is. And then now we're gonna reach through that hole all the way over here. And then you want to grab that fold that you turn on the inside. So now my hand is here, as you can see. And then now I'm just gonna pull it through. There we go. And keeping it matched up, it should still be right size facing. It's very important to get that seam together. You don't want to be goofy and have a seam off. All right. And then now I'm just going to go all the way around, right sides facing, keeping the edges lined up together. So there should be a double notch for the lining, okay? Okay, so now let's head over to the machine, and we're going to stitch all the way around. Okay, so I got it up on the machine and right sides facing with the sleeves. You want to back stitch at the beginning, also at the end. You want to just keep spinning that around. And now you have both stitched together. Okay, so we're back from the machine. As you can see, they're both stitched together. And then now once you pull it back, the cuff is gonna automatically form just like this. And now you want to do the other one the same exact way. Okay, so I'm back from the machine, and basically we're almost done. There's only little minor things to finish up. You want to make sure that you do your top stitching. Now your top stitch is going to go all the way around your collar, around your lapels on both sides, and then you want to stop it right here, and then also around the end of your sleeve. Okay, you have top stitching here. And obviously you want to do all your buttonholes that goes on your right side, and then you want to place your buttons on your left. And it's gonna go just like that. And then also add your buttons on your pockets. And then on the inside, you want to remember to close out. So once you give it a good press, I haven't pressed it yet, but once you press it really well, you want to go ahead and slip stitch that opening at the bottom, and then also slip stitch down here where the facing and the lining meets, right there. And then also here on this side. Oh, last but not least, you want to go ahead and tack down your lining to your jacket. You want to do it here at the shoulders on both sides. You want to tack it down here at the collars just to keep it in place when you put it on and taking it off. Okay, so once you do all of that, you're all done. Okay, you're all done. Congratulations, and I hope you enjoyed the sew along, and be sure to follow Wifey on all her socials at Mimi G Style so we can see all of your amazing makes. And I will see you in the next sew along.